Mexican President Andres Manuel López Obrador is allegedly targeting U.S. voters, advising Hispanic American voters to oppose Florida Governor Ron DeSantis in the upcoming 2024 U.S. presidential election. Now, to chat about this in more detail is political reporter and host of the Foreign Desk, Lisa Daftari, joins us once again from the City of Angels. Now, Lisa, the Mexican president is apparently not a big fan of DeSantis. Why is that?
He says DeSantis has his hand in corruption, like the rest of the politicians, and he's of the political class. Look, let's just take a step backwards here. This is interesting because we're seeing election interference, not in the clandestine way of hacking our systems or getting into their own state-owned media, but this is an actual state leader who is openly giving his opinion and trying to influence a U.S. election. So he's telling Hispanic voters, and as we all know, many Hispanic voters in the state of Florida, where DeSantis did overwhelmingly win re-election, and he's telling Hispanic people all around the country not to vote for him because he is as corrupt as they come. Very interesting times, and it just shows you where this election is going. It's going to be a very chaotic. I'll leave it at chaotic. I was going to call it a circus, but maybe that's, we'll see when we get there. But the fact that we're openly seeing this kind of interference, I know Iran's regime is going to chime in. I know North Korea is going to chime in. I know China is going to chime in, and Russia, and all of them. But it just shows us where we are in terms of our own political climate here in the United States.
You know, it's funny here in Canada, we've been talking a lot about China's alleged foreign interference in our elections here too. So, and many are calling for a public inquiry into that. Now, Lisa, the state of Texas is apparently suing the Biden administration over newly created asylum rule that utilizes a mobile application. How does that work?
Right. So there is this application that says if you are illegal, meaning you do not have proper documentation to enter the country, you can just get on this app, which is created by the administration. It's the Border Patrol app, basically. And you can make yourself an appointment to have a hearing, or to basically facilitate and to speed up the process of coming into the country. So Texas and many other border states are taking action against the administration for their lax policies, because they're the ones who have to bear the brunt of it. As we see, when it trickles into even bluer states and cities like New York City, we see the mayor over there is up in arms. He's done with being in a sanctuary city, and doesn't even want to be called that anymore, because they just cannot absorb the sheer numbers. They do not have the resources. They cannot handle the vetting, the crime, the hotels that are being overrun, etc. So border states like Texas taking matters into their own hands and saying to the administration, if you're not going to stop this, we'll have to take legal action. So they're actually suing the administration because of this app. And they're saying that it's not only facilitating, but it's basically increasing and encouraging illegal immigration.
Let's make our way overseas for just a moment here now. A retired Israeli general says the United States must take a leading role in creating an anti-Iranian coalition to prevent a consolidation of a Chinese-Russian bloc with Tehran. Lisa, some say this coalition is serious and would destabilize the Middle East and cause all sorts of chaos.
Absolutely. I mean, this warning shouldn't even be necessary, but I mean, who's listening anyway, right? The fact that China and Russia are teaming up, not only the two of them, but they're bringing on other rogue players, right? So you have Iran's regime is trading with Russia, is providing them with the drones that they're using in Ukraine. The United States then loosens funds to Iran's regime, who is funding weapons to Russia. And on this end, we are paying for the Ukrainian assets and military equipment in that war. So basically, we're affecting both sides of the conflict between Russia and Ukraine. It's mind-boggling, really. When you connect the dots, it makes zero sense. In terms of foreign policy, we do know that China and Russia are teaming up. We know that a lot of rogue nations are teaming up. They're doing many things to bring about normalization in the region. As you know, they brokered the deal between Saudi Arabia and Iran, which should have been something maybe the United States would have wanted to be privy to, or bringing Saudi Arabia to be a part of the Abraham Accords is something that the United States wanted to work towards. But this bloc is actually stopping them. I know Canada, where you guys are, you just normalized relations with Saudi Arabia last week. This is big news. The fact that these interest-aligned relationships are flourishing is a wonderful thing. But for the United States to take a back seat and not be aware of the bad guys forming these alliances, then that's something that we need to wake up to. And of course, Israel is all over this, warning us and telling us what we need to do. Their intel is top-notch. Of course, they have to watch this threat around the clock because it's in their neighborhood and they're in direct harm's way.
The report surfacing from the U.S. State Department, Lisa, that North Korea once sentenced a toddler to life in prison because the child's family was caught with a copy of the Bible. Now, the entire family, including the 2-year-old, were allegedly given life sentences in a political prison camp back in 2009. Come on, this is unbelievable.
It's unbelievable. And the fact that this story just surfaced is even more unbelievable. Of course, global community is trying to put together a list of human rights abuses by North Korea's regime, and this came up. Of course, that toddler is now in his 20s, but nonetheless, this is what they're capable of. This is what they've done for decades. So crazy story. They were caught with a Bible, obviously trying to punish anyone who's leaning towards God and towards Christianity. We've seen this in many parts of the Middle East and Africa, but we haven't seen it come out of North Korea. And here we have it. China, North Korea clamping down on organized religion, clamping down on Judeo-Christian values of the West. And here is a very heinous example of a young child and his family being punished for merely possessing a Bible.
That's just crazy. Lisa, tensions between China and Vietnam are escalating. A Chinese research ship and 5 escort vehicles were in Vietnam's exclusive economic zone on Friday, close to gas blocks operated by Russian firms in the South China Sea. Now, this took place one day after Vietnam ordered the ships to leave.
Right, but who's listening, right? So China is doing its own thing. Look, these are all provocations. Each one adds one more notch on the belt and gives one more vote of confidence to China about what they are capable of doing and what they will get away with. There are very few South Asian countries who have not been affected by China's bullying. And here you have Vietnam. You can add them to the list. Of course, Japan, South Korea have been very vocal about it. You can add, again, Vietnam to the list, and Taiwan, of course, we're waiting for the announcement of that invasion. And it looks like this is exactly what China is working towards, to make that invasion.
Now, here's something you don't hear about every day. Belgium and Iran did a prisoner swap. An Iranian diplomat convicted of attempting to bomb exiles in France is returning to Tehran, and he was all decorated, nice flowers, he looked nice and healthy, in exchange for a visibly gaunt aid worker who's headed back to Brussels.
Right, and it's horrific how that the world is celebrating this swap. Look, I'm happy for the family of the aid worker. He shouldn't have been, held for even one day, let alone over 400. But the fact that this uneven exchange, this unfair trade, to let a terrorist go to get an innocent aid worker out. The issue with this is the reason why the United States and many nations say we do not negotiate with terrorists. We do not basically, we don't get into these kinds of swaps, or we try not to, is because it sets a precedent that this is what they can get away with. So they hold innocent American citizens or Canadian citizens as pawns, hoping to get terrorists like this one off the hook. And unfortunately, the United States had to do it with Russia. They let Bout go, Victor Bout, who is a notoriously very, very dangerous arms dealer, to let Brittany Griner go, the WNBA player. I know it happens all the time because, of course, if you're the family of these citizens being held in these very dangerous places, you want them out at any price. But when you look at it from a geopolitical standpoint, this was an unfair trade. This is terrorism. It's Iran's regime bullying. And of course, they're going to round up more individuals from European and Western countries because they know that this could be the end result.
Lisa, Turkey's President Erdogan was reelected on Sunday. Now that extends his authoritarian rule into a third decade as the country reels from high inflation and the aftermath of an earthquake that completely leveled entire cities.
Yeah, it looks like, according to their own statistics, he was at 52% of the vote with 99% counted. He's already served 21 years. And of course, this makes his reign ironclad going into yet another term. Look, this guy's not going anywhere anytime soon. He is a de facto dictator, and they have these elections to make it look all pretty and nice. But we know that he is, in fact, a dictator. Turkey is a very interesting country. They've played both sides, the West and the East, very well. And they've managed to be viewed as a Western country while behaving very much like many of the rogue Eastern countries, and have maintained relationships with both sides pretty well because of their geopolitical advantages and location. So here's another term for Erdogan, a country to keep a close eye on in terms of what they're doing with neighboring countries. But here we go.
Now, here's a story I had to read two, even three times. I couldn't believe it when I was reading this here. It appears as though, Lisa, the Russian Navy may have enlisted the services of a beluga whale to do some spying for them. The Norwegian government says this whale allegedly had a specially made harness with mounts for an underwater camera that had equipment of St. Petersburg spelled on it. Marine biologists say the friendly whale has been gathering information since 2019.
We don't know whether to file this one under desperation or creativity. Look, it's innovation, right? So very, very interesting story. What are the Russians capable of? I mean, the fact that they're thinking outside the box like this and that it's worked for them since 2019 is pretty impressive. But yeah, this is one of those did you know stories. And now they can keep an eye on sea life, making sure that they're not, causing any more harm in terms of causing, I don't know, espionage or whatever they're capable of doing, because this is what Russia does. I mean, coming up with very, very creative ways to spy against the enemy.
Let's circle back to the upcoming election here, Lisa, for next year for you guys. Let's talk about the popularity and polling numbers for Joe Biden right now. Where does it stand?
Joe Biden's numbers are abysmal. They have been. Kamala Harris, his VP, even worse, dipping very, very low. I mean, I think at this point it is the Republicans' election to lose, and the Democrats just have to stand back. Meaning, many believe that the way that Joe Biden won this previous election was because he just wasn't Donald Trump, right? So you just want to vote against somebody, not for somebody. And it looks like that's the way it will be again. If Joe Biden is in fact on the ticket and he does win re-election in some miraculous way, it'll be because nobody wants to vote for the Republican on the ticket. So this is a tough time for the Republican Party because they're battling this the popularity of Donald Trump, but can he win is the question. And then if he does not win, I mean, how much damage will that competition be for the Republican candidate who has to go up against Joe Biden? How popular or basically how capable will that Republican candidate be to bring in the center, the women, the left of center, many of those who are absolutely ready to move on from Biden, and many are ready to move on from the Democrat Party because of a lot of the policies that have created, crime in cities, school issues, and the list goes on. Obviously, inflation being on the top of that list. So we'll have to watch this one carefully. But really, we're starting early. We can see many foreign nations are concerned. Mexico's chiming in. We're going to have a lot of other countries chiming in, hopefully not in a way that actually affects the election, but that we do get a capable and just a young energy in the White House to change things around for this country.
But is DeSantis a big enough name for the Republicans to be able to defeat Joe Biden, or do they need Donald Trump once again?
Yeah, that's the issue. I mean, right now the polls show that while DeSantis is gaining momentum, he cannot defeat Donald Trump. I mean, that's according to polls right now. I know a lot of people still find Donald Trump to be the number one choice, but then the question has to be, can he win it all the way? We don't want to prop up Donald Trump to lose against Joe Biden again, right? So it really has to come down to who can win at the White House, not who can win the Republican ticket. And of course, as you know, this country is very divided on Donald Trump, those who love him and love everything about him, and those who just can't even stand to hear his name. Yeah, they don't want to be reminded of his wonderful policies because it just doesn't matter. I think the tweets and the jargon and the way that he speaks, it just really it really cancels him as a candidate for many people, unfortunately. So we have this infighting and this knee-jerk reaction to not allow him to even have a chance to just be in the running like everyone else, DeSantis, Nikki Haley, anyone else who's going to do well. But yeah, it looks like it's going to come down to DeSantis and Trump on the Republican side. It's going to be interesting. And on the Democrat side, I think if Joe Biden wants to run for re-election, then all he has to do is stay silent and see what the Republicans are going to do.
Yeah, looking forward to see how it all unfolds. Political reporter and host of the Foreign Desk, Lisa Daftari, thanks so much for joining us today from Los Angeles.
My pleasure.